Hi everyone, welcome back to the final part of the Information Cell series. This is part 6 of the 6-part series. This is Cindy Shevely, and joining us tonight is Danny Byrne. She's going to show us the final steps in creating an information product, how to wrap it all up and send it on up to Kanaki.
So tonight we're going to talk about producing your video. As Cindy said, video has its own language, and producing is also sometimes called rendering. And they're essentially the same thing, as she said, as save as. Now there's a whole million different things you can think of when you think about producing. But what we want to do tonight is just limit it to 2 essential pieces of software and 2 kinds of finished products. Boiling it down that far, it can still get really complicated because within each of these things there's a whole bunch of considerations. But what we're going to look at tonight is once you've made your screencast in Camtasia, how are you going to then prepare it? Are you going to put it on a CD? That will need certain kinds of rendering settings. Or are you going to send it up to YouTube, where you'll probably want to use some different settings? And then we're going to look at the same thing in Movie Studio. Because if you've shot your video with a flip, say, you don't want to render it in Camtasia. A lot of people do, and they find that they get choppy motion or the sound isn't quite right. If you can take it into Sony and render it in Sony Movie Studio, you'll have a much better movie. And I'll show you the settings you need to make it look like a high-definition video, even if it was shot on a standard definition camera. So, the first thing we're going to talk about is web video, and that's YouTube. Now, you've probably noticed that YouTube has changed quite a lot in the last year or so. They've gone from a normal 4:3 aspect ratio, which is sort of that almost square size that old CRT monitors used to be, to high definition, to aspect ratio that varies a little bit but is closer to 16:9. That's widescreen. And if you want your videos to look modern, even if you're shooting in 4:3, which a lot of us still do, you're going to want to know how to produce in widescreen. Now, shooting in true high def requires a high-definition camera, for one thing, which will be a little more expensive. And then producing the video requires quite a powerful computer. You can produce 5 minutes of video and it would take 3 or 4 hours to render those 5 minutes on an older computer. But if you want to have a life outside of rendering, you're going to need a new computer and a new camera and some new software. And it can get quite expensive just to put a few videos up on YouTube. So I'm going to show you the trick of making your videos look like they were shot in widescreen, even if they weren't. Now, if you do have a widescreen monitor, you want to size your videos to 1280 pixels wide by 720 pixels wide. I don't know if you can tell on the screen you're looking at. There may be black bars on either side of this PowerPoint presentation. I'm using a widescreen laptop to give you this presentation, and I could record in 1280 by 720, but PowerPoint itself at this point still uses 4:3 aspect ratio slides, and so you get those black bands. Well, that's what you would see on YouTube as well if we just went and shot this as is and then rendered it out, produced it at 4:3. There's nothing wrong with that per se, but what I have found and what other people have told me they've found is that a lot of you viewers will send you emails saying, how outdated is the information in this video? I see you're using the old-fashioned cameras. Is this an old video? What's the new correct information? And because things change so quickly on the web, if you've just shot your video yesterday, you don't want the presentation, the look, to be as though you shot it 6 months ago. So 1280 by 720 if you can. If you can't, we'll talk about that as we go along. You want to render or produce your video, they mean the same thing basically, from Sony in either a WMV or an AVI format. If you have a new version of Sony Movie Studio 10, I believe you'll find you now have the choice of also producing it as an MOV. You're going to render your finished product as either an AVI or a WMV and send it up to YouTube, or send it over to DVD Architect to make a DVD, or maybe you're going to take it to another product and turn it into a flash output for final use on even a CD. And your flash output would be then taking this one movie that you've made as an AVI and doing what's called transcoding and turning it into an FLV or a SWIFT file or an MP4. These are all ways of saying flash. It's just different types of flash. FLV has been the web standard for many years for flash with a lot of motion in it. PowerPoint presentations, screen doesn't change very often, so you can usually not worry about something that is able to handle a lot of motion. If, on the other hand, you take your flip and you make a short video and you want to produce it for the web, you're going to want to produce it as an FLV or an MP4 rather than a SWIFT. Okay? I know that sounds like gibberish. Just make a note for yourself. Full motion video you want to do in Sony Vegas, you're probably going to render it as either an AVI or a WMV. If you then send it up to YouTube, YouTube is going to change it. You're not. You don't have to worry about it if you're sending it to YouTube. And they'll make it a flash. If you want to put it on your own website, you're going to have to produce the flash. And if it's a full motion video, you're going to either make it an FLV or an MP4. And which you choose will generally depend on how current your software is. FLV has been the standard. It's slowly being replaced by MP4. If you have the very latest version of Camtasia, you'll have a choice of either one to render your flash. If you have an older version of Camtasia, you'll only have FLV. Your other choice is going to be making a data CD or a DVD. Now, a data CD, as we talked about the other night, is a CD that is not meant to be played in video players or in DVD players. It's meant to be shown on a computer through a CD drive, but it still shows movies. Those movies will be encoded just as they were before, either as a WMV, as a flash, as MOV. They'll have some computer-specific sort of format. If you've made it in Sony Movie Studio, chances are it will be either an MOV or a WMV. If you've made it in Camtasia, chances are it will be Flash. Any of the movies we've talked about and how to make them up to this point can be done in any of these formats, and that's why it gets confusing. There is no one simple answer. I can't say to you, oh, you're holding a camera in your hand, go make a QuickTime movie. That may or may not be the simplest thing for you to do. It certainly would be the simplest one if you owned a Mac, but it may not be the best one for your audience. And you have to think a little bit before you begin about where you're going to show this and what their requirements are. Now, if you've rendered the movie out of Camtasia, again, the original product you brought in may have been a Camtasia file, in which case it's an AVI, and it may be inside of what they call a wrapper called CamRec, which is the Camtasia format of an AVI. It may be an MOV file if you have a handheld camera like a flip or something, or it may even be a WMV file, or perhaps it was an M4T file or something like that, which is something that'll come out of a widescreen or a high-def flip, and you've had to take it into Sony and render it out as a WMV. And then you'd bring it into Camtasia, and this is one of the rare instances where you're going to take live action and bring it into Camtasia, because Camtasia can output very high-quality Flash. So if you want to put this on your own website, not YouTube, your own website using your own Flash player, then you might bring a WMV that you produced in Sony into Camtasia and render it once again, just as you would have in the previous example. On the other hand, if you want to send it up to YouTube, well, that's what we talked about before. You would just send it up to YouTube and they would make a Flash. But if you're going to make this CD, what you want to do is probably make it in the format that is most accessible to the most number of people. And again, most people have Flash on their computers, and so you'll find FLV, SWF, or MP4 to be the most widely compatible format. If you have only people with Windows and you know that no Mac users will ever want to look at your video, you may want to use AVI instead, and you'll have a sharper, clearer, much crisper picture, but AVIs won't play on Macs. If you're rendering it only for Mac users, you might want to render it out instead as a QuickTime movie, but even though Windows is capable of playing QuickTime, a lot of Windows users have trouble with it. If you want to avoid a lot of customer service-related questions, use Flash and have the movie play inside the viewer's web browser. You've probably seen this if you've looked at any of the CDs that Ghostlake has produced. We've often used the web player when we make movies, for instance, for OSI Success Library. They play inside a web browser. Those are FLV format. When we've made them for ourselves, like Cindy's Facebook series, that was an FLV, and it played inside a web browser. So you have a lot of choices, but usually at the end of the day, you're going to end up with just a few formats to produce and render your live action as, and one or two choices for your final output to be played on a computer, either on your own website, on a CD, a data CD, or up to YouTube. So, as we've said, Camtasia is what you're going to use for screencast recording. Sony's what you're going to use to edit live action video. You may bring that back to Camtasia at some point just to render the final Sony product into Flash. So let's take a look at Sony Movie Studio's rendering settings. This is Sony Movie Studio. Now I'm using Sony Platinum Movie Studio 8. As we said in the other show, we're using this to conserve some resources. Sony Movie Studio 10 is a little more resource heavy. Now, one thing that may be of interest to you if you have older versions or you get different versions, both with Camtasia and with Sony Movie Studio and Sony Vegas, you can have several versions of the same program and they don't compete with each other. So if you have Sony Movie Studio 8, just the plain old cheap $29 version, and you decide that you have a new high-def camera and you want to get Movie Studio Premium 10, you can keep both installed so that you can use the regular old one to produce videos, perhaps in standard def on an older computer, and use the new one on your new computer with all of its hundreds of gigs of RAM and, millions of gigs of RAM, and extra processing power without them stepping on each other. And the same goes for Camtasia. You can have Camtasia 4, 5, and 6 all running on the same computer if for some reason you want to. Now let's take a look a little bit at the rendering, which gets, I hope, not too confusing. You just have an awful lot of choices. Down here on Sony Movie Studio, we have the preview window. Up here on the timeline, we have two clips. One is in widescreen. It's not actually true high def, but it is widescreen. And the other is in 4:3 aspect ratio. And when we look at the widescreen one, you see it takes up the entire preview window. I've set the preview to match the aspect ratio of the clip I'm working on. Now, if you watch over here, there's nothing really terribly fancy. It's just a widescreen picture of some rain on leaves. But if we were to render this in the wrong format for YouTube, what you would end up seeing is bars either above and below or on either side, depending on how they decided to do their final format, instead of this wide screen. What's going to tell YouTube that it's high def are the settings. So what you want to do is come to File, Render As. And I think Sony 10 might say Produce As, I'm not sure. Then you're going to get this screen, Render As, and pick your format. Now, I'm going to say we're going to YouTube with this clip. So I would suggest you render this out as a WMV. But we don't want to take the standard WMV settings, because then YouTube is going to treat it as a standard definition video and you'll have those black bars. So what you want to do is come over to Custom, click Custom, and we're going to start setting it up so that it will be rendered out as high definition to YouTube. So the first thing we're going to do is change the video rendering quality to best. Then come to your Audio tab. Normally, audio, you would just take something relatively good and it wouldn't be a big deal. To get high definition, you have to tell YouTube very specifically that it's high def audio. So we're going to take constant bit rate. We're going to take the best Windows media that we have. You may have 11, you may have 9. Just take your highest one. And then you're going to want to change it 64 kbps, and we want 48, not 44, 48 kilohertz, two-channel, 16-bit constant bit rate. Okay? So you can see up here it started at 44. We're changing that to 48 in the drop-down list. Then we're going to go to video. You want constant bit rate because you're going across the web. The bit rate may or may not vary. You don't know what it's going to be from YouTube, so you just want to keep it constant for the best, smoothest playback. Again, you would take your best video codec, and that will depend on what you have on your computer, what you've downloaded from Microsoft when you upload your Windows Media Player. On this computer, it's 9. The image size is where it gets to be very crucial. Come to custom. 640 by 360 is what we've got here, and that's standard definition widescreen. If we want them at YouTube to think we have high definition, what we want is 1280 by 720. It's very important now. 1280 by 720 is high definition. Then the pixel aspect ratio is square. If you've brought this in from a camcorder, you may have a different pixel aspect ratio. It's important, once again, to change that to square, 1.00 square, because you're rendering for computer, not for a flat panel TV. Frame rate is 30, and you want to take your smoothness all the way to 100. Make it as sharp as you can. Your bit rate you want to change to high-speed internet, and you want to make that 2.5 to 3 megabytes. When you're all done, you've changed all those settings, instead of saying default template, it's a good idea to come up here and change this to, let's call it YouTube HD, and click the Save button. That makes this template available to you for your next video, so you don't have to come back and redo these settings every time. You can just select it from this drop-down list. See it down here? And you won't have to go through and change everything. Then say OK, give it a name, and click Save, and it'll begin rendering. That's how you set it up for YouTube for best quality. Okay? Well, what if you don't have widescreen? What if you have something much more like this? And let me pull this up so you can see it. See the black bars here on either side? This is the YouTube player at the 16:9 ratio, but your media is in the old 4:3, and it's not quite what you want. You want to not have people saying, how old is this information? Well, let me give you a trick that will work almost always to render standard definition to widescreen. Not necessarily high def, just widescreen. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is go into Event Pan and Crop. And remember, that's this icon here. Click on it, and we're going to change from the default down to the widescreen 16:9 aspect ratio. And now you see we're clipping here. We're cropping this to accommodate. You'll lose some of your image, but it will be a widescreen image. So we'll say OK. At this point, apply those same YouTube settings, but there's no point in trying to squeeze 1280 pixels out of something that started with 640. So instead, I'm going to go up once again and render as. I'm going to choose Windows Media and go into Custom. And once again, you can use good at this point rather than best, but I would use best and let YouTube deal with the loss of quality rather than starting with the loss of quality. Go in, make it constant bit rate, your best quality Windows Media audio, and you can use the same settings as we did before. Change this to 64 kbs at 48 kilohertz stereo. Then go into video, change it to constant bitrate, Windows Media 9. Instead of keep original size, come down to custom. And you want to change it to 640 by 360. This will give you the correct aspect ratio for widescreen, and yet it will drop it down into the standard definition range. Then change it to square 1 by 1 square pixel if it isn't there already. Bump up your sharpness. Make your bit rate high speed, and again, make it somewhere between 2 and 3. For this, I usually go 2.5. And you can name your template again. Maybe call it SD widescreen YouTube. And click Save. And it will be added just as YouTube High Def was. Now YouTube Standard Def is. Say OK. And if I click Save here now, this would render or produce that video in that size. So you see what we're doing is we're just trying to make our picture fit the output, the screen itself, the masking that goes around the video players. So that's how you render this in Sony Movie Studio. And your final output will either be an AVI, a WMV, or MOV. I showed you WMV. You'll have a chance to select the same settings on AVI or MOV. The screens will look a tiny bit different, but the values you're going to put into them will be the same. Now let's look at that as a Camtasia. Here's one of the previous videos we did in this series. This, as you can see, is 4 by 3. You have your black bars again. If you're going to send this up to YouTube, again, you're probably going to want to get rid of the black bars and do the same kind of thing that we just did with Sony Movie Studio. You're going to go up to File, Produce Video As. You have many choices of where to find that. Produce Video As, Produce Video As. I think that's this one, Produce Video As. When it comes here, don't take a preset. Come down to Custom and go to Next. You're going to want to produce it as Adobe Flash output. For Kanaki, that's on your CD. As we said, Flash will be much more universally accepted. Or if you're going to YouTube, you're going to want to do MOV or WMV. I'm going to run through the Flash settings on Camtasia. The WMV or the MOV are actually just the same as they were in Sony Movie Studio. And the Flash is going to be very similar. But I want a chance to show you the behind the scenes on the Flash because it's a little bit trickier to find your way through than the WMV and the MOV, which are right up front. What you see is what you get. You don't have to dig through menus. On the Flash in Kanaki, in Camtasia, you do. So I want to take this chat to show you how to make the Flash come out to the kind of output you want that will be suitable. In this case, we're going to make it a 4:3 output so that we can put it inside a menu in web player. Okay, so we hit next, and what I almost always use is the Express Show, but you have a bunch of choices. You have one video, table of contents, Express Show with a table of contents, and Legacy Swift. Now, if you look around Web Seller Circle's archives, you'll see almost all of these in use at some point. We do have some with the table of contents. We do have some where you'll see the entire Express Show. Usually it's the Express Show inside of what's called an iframe, so you don't see the whole page. This is the best one to use if you're going to embed it on your own website and you don't have your own Flash player. If you use something on your website like the JW Flash player, you may want to use one video. But for now, let's just make it easy and say we're using Express Show. Okay? So that's the first place where you have a choice to make. Then you want to come to Flash Options and click on it. And you'll see you have the choice of the Swift file or the FLV. And as we discussed, if you have a longer, high-motion video, and by longer, that's usually more than 5 or 10 minutes at the most, you want to go with FLV. If you have a short video that's about 5 minutes, or something like PowerPoint where there's very little motion on the screen, then you'd want to go with Swift. Swift files are uncompressed and they're a higher quality. That is, you'll get a sharper, clearer product at the end. But they have a limitation on how many frames they can have. And so you have to choose very carefully where you use Swift. Most of the time, if you have motion or a longer video, you're going to have to trade quality for quantity and go with FLV. Come down here to the FLV section. If you have a PowerPoint presentation like this is largely in some of our earlier shows, you might want to keep it at 6. That's a very low frame rate. Give you a smaller video, but there's not a lot of change going on. If you have a full motion video that you've brought in and you're making a Swift file, you want to give it as high as you can, maybe 15, maybe even go to automatic if it's mixed, and let Camtasia try to figure out the best setting. But I usually use 15 if there's much motion. Your bit rate, I would change to 1,000, and you want to keep it constant. Again, that's CBR, constant bit rate. Keyframes, every 5 seconds, low motion. BP6 is the codec. In Camtasia Studio, you'll have a choice of different codecs depending on which version of Camtasia you have. TechSmith, the people who make Camtasia, license the video codecs from the people who invent them. And so if you have Camtasia 5, which this is, at that time, the best Flash codec that they could license was VP6. And that's why you get really high quality Flash from Camtasia, because they do license the highest quality. Beginning in 6, they began to also license MP4s. So up here with Swift and Flash, you'd have a choice of MP4. And down here is your video codec. You'd have H.264. And that gives you an extremely sharp picture, sharper than FLV. So if you have a choice, you try to use MP4 with H.264. I don't have that in this one. The controls are the scrubber bar at the bottom, what you see and what you don't, whether you see the time playback, pause at start, if you wanted to jump to a different URL at the end. Once that's all set, you would just say OK. You're still not done. Then you want to match the dimensions to what you want your output to be. If you were going to try and make this high definition on YouTube, you'd want that 1280 by 720. And you would have gotten your output by now into that size. You wouldn't wait till the last second. You would have produced your project in that. You would have framed your screen before you started shooting in 1280 by 720. You would have planned ahead and you would have shot in that. This was a square screen, so my original is 1280 by 818 with the controls. What I'm going to do is change dimensions. Now, I'm going to pretend that this video is going on a CD, as you recall. And 1280 by 818, that looks good on my computer, may not look so good on your computer. Maybe your monitor doesn't go any higher in its resolution than 1024 by 768. If we give it this higher 1280 by 818 finish size, you'll have to scroll from side to side in your browser, up and down to see all the information. And again, no one wants to do that. You'll be dealing with return products, and you'll have a lot of complaints and a lot of customer service. If you're selling a CD, one of the things you have to do is try to anticipate the needs of the greatest number of users. And that usually means 1024 by 760. What we're going to do is render this as 800 by 600 instead. And then we're going to come over here and give it a custom size so that it will fit my controls. And you see, as long as you have keep aspect ratio checked, Camtasia figures it out for you. Then just say yes. And they're going to make it 800 by 518. And that's because, of course, you can't see it here, but when we go from PowerPoint to the web browser in the series, we go widescreen. If what I'm saying is to fit on most computer screens, and we're going to say most people have 1024 by 768, the biggest we want our video to be is 8 by 6. And it seems like a come down. Why not 1024? Because as you realize when you look at a web browser, there's a lot of stuff around it besides just the video. And you don't want all of that. So, you have what they call the Chrome, your header with the buttons and your scroll bars on the side. You may be making a table of contents. You have the status bar along the bottom. By the time all of that gets in there, if your video itself is 1024, again, you'll find that people with a 1024 display have to scroll. So we've dropped down a size to 8 by 6, and then Camtasia adds itself the size of the controls. So our final output here is 800 by 518. Again, that may have seemed like, where the hell did that come from? It came from Camtasia being able to look at the file. It reads a special file that's produced when the video is produced. It knows what size it needs. If you don't fight too much with it, you'll get a very good final output from Camtasia. Then you just click Next. Again, you have all of these different choices. Is it going to YouTube? Is it going to CD? And I want to make sure you're aware of the variety. You don't have to take it all in at once. If this were going up to YouTube, we wouldn't necessarily need to embed it. If we're going to make our own video and put it on a CD, we do want to embed it into HTML. Click Next, give it a name, give it a place so you can find it when you're done. And down here in this window, Camtasia tells you where it's going to put all of these files when it's done. Then you click Finish, and it will render your video for you. So now let's pull up the old web browser. And we're going to go to this place you've heard us refer to all throughout this series, Kanaki. So this is Kanaki's website, www.kanaki.com. It's pretty straightforward and simple. When you get here, look for the pricing. Their structure is that the price changes during the day with their load. If you want to know the current price, go to pricing and look at the bottom, and they'll give you their up-to-the-minute pricing. It does change throughout the day, so it's always worth double-checking before you order. Do your math. It may be cheaper to order 1 to 10 CDs, even with the higher shipping cost, if you're paying more per disc. On the other hand, the shipping costs drop lower as you get more discs, and you may find it more economical to order 11 or more discs at a time. When you're ready to upload your product, click on New Customers. Read what it says, and notice that there are several ways now to add your product. We're going to demonstrate the first one, and that's the traditional Kanaki method. But you can now also send your CDs up to Kanaki. Click where it says click here, and then again click where it says click here. Run or download the small installer for the Kanaki duplicator. Takes a second to load, and then you'll notice a green button in the upper right-hand corner. That's your next button. Always click it when you're done. We're going to be making a data CD, whether it's a CD or a DVD. If you only have data, always click Data. Notice Kanaki gives you a free UPC symbol. If you're going to sell on Amazon, this is a must, so be sure to check yes when offered the choice of a UPC symbol. Anything in bold is required by the Kanaki catalog. Anything not in bold will be used to help classify your CD, but it's not absolutely vital. For this demo, we're just going to do the minimum necessary to get to the next screen. Fill in a title and a publisher, and then click Next. This is the main screen. It always opens to a blank jewel case CD. You can have either a CD-ROM or a DVD, and you can put either disc in a jewel case or a DVD case. Most of the time, for the kind of products we make as screencasters, we'll be doing CDs, but we always put ours in a DVD case. It mails much better. We found that they stand up to crushing and they look much more professional. Now, Kanaki allows you to use their library of predetermined CD cases if you don't have your own. These are okay, nothing spectacular, but if you can't make your own CD case, they're certainly better than nothing. So you might want to spend a second going through and looking at them. The information on the case is drawn from that initial screen where you said the name and publisher and other information. The more information you fill in, the more you'll see on the stock case. As I said, we don't recommend that you use this. We recommend that you use the custom case. And we provide the artwork template for you at Web Seller Circle. That's in a previous episode of this series. So you just click on the button, go to the location where you've got your case, click OK, and it'll be uploaded to Kanaki. The disc, the wraparound case, and the inside case card are the 3 parts to a DVD case. As you upload each one, it's added to their store, and you can use the open and rotate case buttons to see what your product will look like with the case you've made. Check it closely to make sure the UPC symbol is there. If you forgot it, use your browser's back buttons to add it. Check that your spine is reasonably well centered, and check that none of your title has been cut off on the disc. Once you're pretty sure that your disc will come out looking exactly the way you want it, click the next button again. At this point, you want to already have your CD burned and ready for duplicating in the CD drawer. Tell Kanaki which drawer in your computer has your CD player. You'll see the basic root of the disk. If that's correct, click Next. You'll be asked to give the Kanaki application a name. I usually just name the name of the project and click Save. Put anywhere on your computer to save that disk. And Kanaki will make a small, very small file that it will use to upload your CD and keep it moving if you lose internet connectivity. It may take several hours, but your disk will be uploaded. If you don't want to use the Web Seller Circle template, you can make your own artwork by following the dimensions available on Kanaki. But don't forget, all of this has already been done for you. Just go to the download library at Web Seller Circle, do a search for templates or info products, and we have a Photoshop template for the wraparound cover, the CD disc, and for the case card. All of these can be customized in any way for your own product. The colors and the text and the graphics can be customized so that you'll have a unique DVD or CD when you make your own product. And that's available to all members of the Web Seller Circle. Now, I'm not going to go through and try and upload it because, again, it's a slow process, and if you try to stop it once it begins, everything crashes. Depending on how much data you have, the upload can take anywhere from 2 hours to overnight. So we usually do it at Ghost Leg right before we go to bed. We just start it and let it run. Kanaki recommends that you do not try to do this with Wi-Fi. They suggest that you always plug your computer in and use a hardwired connection. And you'll have fewer dropped frames, and you'll have a faster upload. And I would suggest strongly that you follow their suggestion in this matter. If you have a laptop, you use it as Wi-Fi, it'll almost always be able to accept a wired connection as well. Just plug it in and go retro for that one evening. When you're done, come down the next day and you'll see a little bit of a message in the middle of your screen saying, congratulations, your product has been uploaded. When you go to your email, you'll have an email saying your product is retail ready and you can order it. It is immediately available from Kanaki for order. Once you upload it, you don't have to wait 3 days or 6 days for them to review it. You don't have to review it and approve it yourself. If you want to, without ever looking at it, you can order 100 copies and send them off to Amazon and start selling. That's not the wisest course, especially if this is your very first one. It's a good idea to order one, have it sent to you. They'll give you your first order free, not your first order of each disc, just your first order for free. And you can see your CD, see how it plays, see if you made any mistakes. If you want to make a change on a CD or a DVD, you upload the whole thing from scratch. You cannot just go back if you made a spelling error on the case and re-upload the case. You have to upload the whole product all over again. So proofread it before you do it, proofread it before you approve it, and then order your CD, proofread it again before you start sending it out. So that is our series on how to make information-ready products. And again, you can mix and match these things. You can have a DVD in a case, and then you can go somewhere else and make a book, or have a binder with several CDs that you include and send them out. It's all up to you. The main thing you want to do is deliver quality to your clients and your customers. So for me and for Cindy,
we'll see ya.
Thanks for sticking with us through this show. I want to remind you all that we're going to do a talk show broadcast. What we're going to do is, because a lot of people have told us they weren't able to get to these shows, that they weren't at a good time of night for people, what we're going to do is put them all up on Web Seller Circle, and once that's done, about 2 weeks after that, when people have had a chance to go through them, we're going to come back to TalkShoe and just have a round-robin kind of discussion where you can ask questions or find out more information about any of the episodes. So you can watch them all at your convenience, and we can do TalkShoe at a better time. So for Cindy and me, this is Danny from the Web Seller Circle. I'd like to thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you on the discussion boards.